Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend. In this video, we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite IEMs. So let's start off with this one. So this is the C Audio Yume, the original one. And it's one of my favorite IEMs because it's one of the best tuned IEMs under $200 or $300. The mid-range is pretty spot on. The treble is good enough, and the bass control is very tight. So I'm going to talk about what I like about some of these IEMs and then what I don't like. So for the C Audio Yume, I like the mid-range a lot because it has the proper amount of gain in that upper mid-range. And then the bass quality driver in here is really good. It's not boomy, but it's tight. So really, really good bass and mid-range. And then now on to the other tier of IEMs. So the C Audio Yume OG costs about $150. And these are slightly more expensive. So let's start off with the Moondrop variations for this level. So the Moondrop variation is exceptionally tuned from the bass all the way to the treble. The bass on this has the most bouncy bass I've ever heard. It's really, really good. The dynamic driver in here does its job. And then the mid-range is very, very good with instruments. Everything's separated really well. And the treble is very smooth, but it's still airy at the same time. So that's what I like about the Moondrop variations. And for this price range, it has a lot of detail. It competes with some IEMs that cost $200-$300 more. So the variations gets my highest recommendation. This is endgame for people who don't want to spend more, and it's amazing. So yeah, that's the Moondrop variations. And now let's talk about the Symphonium Audio Helios. So what I like about this IEM a lot is the treble. The treble on the Helios is just simply the best treble I've ever heard. It reaches the limits of what my ears are capable of. I think I mentioned that in the review, but yeah, the treble is just spot on. It has immense amounts of air that I haven't heard in any other IEM. So for the Helios, I'd say the treble itself makes it worth the price. So yeah, in terms of the details, I think the variations in the Helios are pretty close. Some people who are less experienced might think more treble means more detail or the perception, but when you listen to an IEM, you should be focused on the layering, how well layered it is, and how well separated the elements of the sound are, not just how airy the treble is. But so yeah, having good treble might help with detail, but just because an IEM has more treble doesn't mean it's more detailed. Because the Helios has the best treble out of any of these IEMs, but it's not that detailed, even compared to the variations. So if the variations is an A grade, the Helios is maybe an A plus, or they're really close in terms of the detail. Yeah, A or A plus, and this would be like an A grade for the details. So yeah, and then let's talk about the IERM9. So the IERM9 is simply one of the most detailed IEMs I've ever heard. It's way more detailed than the variations in the Helios, just on another level. in my opinion. And what I love about the IERM9 is how coherent it is. It's perfectly in sync. I know exactly where everything is placed because the voices are dead center right here. And then the bass is right below it. You hear it. And then the instruments are completely separated from everything else. They're free flowing. When things come in and out, like when a flute is playing here, the guitar's over here, or a trumpet is in the middle, it's able to handle much more information than the variations or the Helio. So yeah, that's what I like a lot about it. Simply amazing because it's extremely coherent, and when you listen to busy tracks, that's where the IRM9 just shines. On orchestra tracks like Two Steps from Hell, some Hans Zimmer, maybe some Taylor Swift stuff, since those are usually mastered better. So yeah, that's the IRM9. Simply one of my favorite IEMs. And then let's talk about the U12T. So the U12T presents a sound in like a line. Everything is extremely focused on the placements, where everything is. And what I love about the U12T is how well layered it is. And after you listen to the U12T, after you listen to the IERM9, everything on some of these IEMs just sounds smaller. So yeah, the U12T is spot on. The treble is very airy. The mid-range has good amounts of gain. So the instruments sound pretty spot on. Maybe not as good as the Helios because how well extended the treble is on the Helios. But yeah, I'll get more into that when we talk about the negatives. So let's talk about some of the negatives. So for the C Audio Yume, it doesn't have the best treble extension or the best detail. It's like maybe around a B minus or a C plus for the details because it's not separated in a nice manner like some of these other IEMs are. And then other than that, that's the only thing that's lacking. Not having good treble, like extremely airy, and then it doesn't have the best separation. So yeah, that's C Audio Yume. And then the variations, sometimes when I listen to some orchestra tracks or things that have more mid bass, I thought the variation was lacking maybe a few decibels in the lower mid regions. So I do wish that area was a little more filled in, and I do wish the variations was a little more detailed. But for the price, I have no complaints. It's really, really detailed for the price. Now let's talk about the Helios. So I really don't like how incoherent the Helios is. It's not that coherent. And I wish it had better right-left depth to the sound. Yeah, so imaging, coherency, and right-left depth. Not my favorite thing about the Helios. So the only reason why I like the Helios a lot is because of the treble. It's very, very airy. And the bass and the mid-range are fine also. But yeah, so like, what I mean by coherency is when an instrument is playing in turn, it should be able to be sustained or be like perfectly in sync to the point where you can discern it without thinking too much about the sound. Like it pops up perfectly. And I think more IEMs, they should try to use coaxial speakers where it's perfectly aligned. I think the IE or Z1R is the only IEM that does that. So yeah, that's what I thought. And then what I don't like about the IERM9 is the bass bleeds into the lower mid range. So for some voices, you do get a little bit of boxiness and too much warmth in the mid bass region. And then another thing I'm not the biggest fan of on the IRM9 is the warm tonality in the mid range. Sometimes it could just sound too warm, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, but the imaging and coherency is the best I've ever heard in any IEM, so I could totally live with that. And then the U12T, what I don't like about it is how the lower treble is a little recessed. So I do wish it was a little more linear. And then I think the bass is fine. I do wish it was a little bit more coherent compared to the IRM9. And maybe slightly better imaging. So I think coherency has a big part to do with how well the imaging is. So yeah, that's what I thought. Overall, these are my favorite IEMs. So if I had to pick my top two, it would be the U12T, then the IRM9. And then these two are like a tie. So I guess these two are my third favorite. And then C Audio Yume would be the last one. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And have a great weekend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And take care. Like, comment, and subscribe.